The sky over Germany, late 1943. It's a frozen, hostile kingdom at 25,000 feet. Inside a B-17 flying fortress, the air is thin, recycled through rubber oxygen masks that crackle with ice. Every breath is a labor. The temperature outside is 60 below zero. Inside, it's not much warmer. Your world is a vibrating aluminum tube, filled with the constant, deafening roar of 4 Wright Cyclone engines. You look out through the plexiglass, and the view is terrifyingly beautiful. A vast river of silver bombers stretches for miles, glinting in the pale sun. But below, the landscape is scarred with black flowers, fat bursts. Blossoming with deadly precision, each one a puff of smoke that means someone is trying to kill you. And then you see them, tiny black specks against the glare of the sun. They grow with impossible speed, resolving into the shapes of Focke-Wulfs and Messerschmitts. The German fighters. They don't peel off and attack from the rear like in the movies. They come at you head-on, a 12 o'clock high attack, flying through their own flak, their cannons blinking like deadly stars. You have seconds to react. The gunners shout, the .50 calibers hammer, and the entire formation tightens up, hoping the wall of defensive fire is enough. Sometimes it is. Often it isn't. This is the reality after the disastrous raids on Schweinfurt and Regensburg. This is the aftermath of Black Thursday, when 60 bombers, 600 men were lost in a single day. The American daylight bombing strategy is on the verge of collapse. The theory was simple: fly in tight formations, and the combined firepower of 1,000 machine guns would protect the bombers all the way to the target and back. But the theory was breaking against the rocks of the Luftwaffe. The Reich's industrial heartland, the ball-bearing factories, the engine plants, was too deep inside Germany. Our escorts, the rugged P-47 Thunderbolts and the twin-boomed P-38 Lightnings, are magnificent aircraft. But they are thirsty. They have the fight, but not the legs. Somewhere near the German border, their pilots would waggle their wings in a final, heartbreaking salute and turn for home, their fuel gauges needle-deep in the red. And for the bomber crews, that was the moment true dread set in. The little friends were gone. From that point on, you were alone. A Luftwaffe pilot later recalled, "It was when their escorts turned for home that our main hunt began." For the bomber crews, it was hours of vulnerability, counting the minutes until the turn for home, flying through a hornet's nest. The Allied High Command knows this can't continue. The losses are unsustainable. The entire strategy for winning the war in Europe is at risk. If the bombers can't get through, the invasion of Europe might fail before it even begins. But in the cold, tense briefing rooms back in England, whispers begin to circulate. A rumor. A promise of something new. It's not a name at first, just a shape described in hushed, hopeful tones. A fighter with a revolutionary razor-thin wing designed for speed and efficiency. A deep, powerful belly housing a radiator system that gives it range. Unbelievable range. Pilots hear stories of a new Merlin engine, the same heart as the Spitfire, but supercharged and perfected, promising performance at the high altitudes where the bombers fly. Could one aircraft really make a difference? Could one design change the brutal arithmetic of the air war? The crews are skeptical. They've heard promises before. They need to see it. Then, on a deep penetration mission, heading for a target that has always been beyond the reach of friendly fighters, a tail gunner squints into the sun. He scans the sky, his eyes tracing the familiar contrails of his own bomber group. He's waiting for the inevitable specks of the Luftwaffe to appear, but then he sees something else. New contrails, sharp and clean, sliding in from high and behind. They're not thunderbolts. They're not lightnings. They're sleek silver shapes he's never seen before. Graceful yet predatory. They slip into position on the flanks of the bomber stream, their bubble canopies offering their pilots a commanding view of the sky. A gunner holds his breath, waiting for them to peel away, waiting for the familiar, lonely departure. But they don't. The bombers cross the invisible line where the P-47s always turned back. And the new fighters stay with them. They keep going. Deeper and deeper into the Reich, east, toward Berlin. A new chapter in the air war has just begun. The story of the Mustang is a story of impossible deadlines. In 1940, the British came knocking, desperate for more fighters. They wanted North American Aviation to build the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk under license. But North American had a bolder idea. Why build someone else's plane when they could design a better one, faster? They made an audacious promise. A brand new fighter prototype in just 120 days. the clock was ticking. In a whirlwind of creative energy, draftsmen hunched over their tables, sketching out a radical new design. The key was a laminar flow wing, a shape so precise it promised to slice through the air with astonishingly low drag. Below the fuselage, they engineered a clever bathtub radiator scoop. It wasn't just for cooling. It used a scientific principle called the Meredith effect to turn waste heat into a tiny bit of extra thrust. Every detail was about speed and efficiency. In an unbelievable 102 days, the prototype, the NA-73X, was rolled out. It was a masterpiece of rapid innovation. But a great airframe needs a great engine, and this is where the early Mustangs stumbled. The first models were powered by an Allison V1710. Down low on the deck, it was a screamer. The Royal Air Force pilots who first flew it in combat loved its speed and agility. It was a fantastic reconnaissance fighter and ground attack aircraft. But as it climbed, the Allison engine with its single-stage supercharger literally started to gasp for air. Above 15,000 feet, its performance dropped off dramatically. It just couldn't breathe in the thin, cold air where the high-altitude bombers flew. The Mustang was a thoroughbred, but it was running a marathon at a sprinter's pace. It couldn't escort the bombers deep into enemy territory where they were most vulnerable. While the first Mustangs were proving their worth at low altitude, a brilliant experiment was taking place back in Britain. A Rolls-Royce test pilot, intrigued by the Mustang's sleek design, had a flash of inspiration. What if they fitted their own legendary engine, the Merlin, into the American airframe? The Merlin, with its revolutionary two-stage, two-speed supercharger, was born for the high altitudes. The transplant was a success beyond anyone's wildest dreams. It was like a lightning strike. Suddenly, the airplane woke up. At 25,000 feet, where the Allison had struggled, the Merlin-powered Mustang came alive, a predator in its natural element. Back in the United States, the Packard Motor Car Company began mass-producing a licensed version of the Merlin, designated the V1650. The result was the P-51B, and it was a revelation. This wasn't just an improvement. It was a total transformation. The climb rate was phenomenal. Its speed let pilots dictate the terms of any engagement. They could chase down anything or run from anything. And its range, with 75-gallon paper drop tanks, it could fly farther than any single-engine fighter had before. Add the 108-gallon tanks, and its reach became legendary. But this engineering miracle wasn't happening in a vacuum. Every day the solution was being perfected in labs and on test flights. More American bomber crews were dying in the skies over Germany. The 8th Air Force was taking horrific losses. They were desperate for a fighter that could go all the way to Berlin and back. The decision was made. The USAAF would adopt the new P-51B and its bubble canopy cousin, the P-51C. Across the freezing airfields of England during the winter of 1943, pilots began converting to the new fighter. They had to learn its quirks, its power, its incredible potential. Commanders were taking a huge gamble, betting the lives of their bomber crews on this unproven, long-legged fighter. The stage was set for one of the most pivotal moments of the air war. As dawn broke on a cold morning, the first squadrons of Merlin-powered Mustangs taxied onto the runways. The flimsy glue and paper drop tanks were slung under their wings, full of fuel and promise. Their mission was simple, yet something no escort had ever managed to do. Go deep, stay with the bombers, and fight all the way home. The calendar flips to the winter of 1943, and a new shape slices through the frigid European air. The P-51 Mustang has arrived. There's no gentle introduction. It's thrown straight into the crucible, a massive week-long daylight bombing campaign in late February 1944, codenamed Big Week. The objective? Cripple the Luftwaffe by systematically destroying its aircraft factories. This isn't just about getting bombers to the target anymore. It's about getting them there, protecting them while they drop their loads, and, most crucially, getting them home again. For the pilots, the war shrinks to the size of a plexiglass canopy. Imagine you're a fresh-faced lieutenant with the 354th Fighter Group, the Pioneer Mustang Group. You're cruising at 25,000 feet near Brunswick, Germany. Your eyes ache from scanning the blinding blue, searching for the faintest glint of metal, the thinnest wisp of a contrail. Your wingman calls it out, "Boogies, 11 o'clock high!" Your heart hammers against your ribs. You check your gun sight, your fuel gauge, and your engine instruments in a single practiced motion. Time to see what this new bird can do. In the cockpits of the 4th and 357th Fighter Groups, a new kind of calculus dominates every mission. It's a constant mental juggle of fuel consumption, drop tank management, and the insidious creep of hypoxia. You learn to lean out the fuel mixture just so, milking every last drop of gasoline to push deeper into enemy territory than any American fighter has gone before. You watch your oxygen blinker, knowing that a faulty connection means a quick, silent end. All while your head is on a swivel, scanning, always scanning, for the shark-like silhouettes of Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs. Then, a change comes down from the top. A seismic shift in strategy from the new commander of the 8th Air Force, General Jimmy Doolittle. The order is simple and revolutionary. The first duty of the 8th Air Force fighters is to destroy German fighters. No more sticking close to the bombers, tied to their slow, predictable pace. Doolittle has unleashed the hounds. The new mission is to hunt. To roam ahead of the bomber stream, seek out the Luftwaffe on its own turf, and sweep it from the sky. It's a doctrine born of aggression, and it's made possible by one thing: the Mustang's incredible range. Finally, the escorts can go all the way. From the German perspective, the sky suddenly feels different, more hostile. Luftwaffe flight controllers vector their interceptor wings toward the incoming bomber formations, only to have their pilots radio back in panic and confusion. The American fighters are already there, waiting, above them. Veterans who had survived the Eastern Front and the skies over Britain find themselves in swirling, desperate dogfights against an enemy that seems to be everywhere at once. After-action reports tell a grim story. Experienced squadron leaders shot down, replaced by teenagers with a fraction of the flight hours, their nerves already frayed. A German ace writes in his logbook, "We found them over Berlin. They were not supposed to be there. How are they here?" The answer is the Mustang's Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, its two-stage supercharger kicking in at high altitude, giving pilots the power to climb and fight where the air is thin. The pilots learn its quirks, its strengths. You're in a dive, closing on a Focke-Wulf. Punch the button to jettison your drop tanks, shedding the weight and drag, and feel the Mustang leap forward. Later in '44, the revolutionary K-14 computing gun sight will make deflection shooting almost intuitive, turning good pilots into masters of aerial gunnery. In March 1944, the ultimate test arrives. American bombers strike the heart of the Third Reich Berlin in broad daylight. And for the first time, they have a fighter escort all the way to the target, and all the way back. The little friends, as the bomber crews call them, are finally able to fulfill their promise. As those Mustangs turn for home, their wings stained with cordite and gun smoke, the pilots feel it. It's not just a victory. It's a fundamental shift. The balance of the air war has just tilted irrevocably in their favor. The long, bloody road to Berlin is now open. Spring 1944. The air war over Europe has entered a new, brutal phase. The relentless rhythm of combat is now set by the hum of Merlin engines. Far ahead of the bomber streams, the Mustangs roam, silver sharks in a hostile sky. Their mission: to break the Luftwaffe before it can even form up. They dive on the assembling schwarm, scattering the German fighters, disrupting their carefully planned interceptions. The hunter has become the hunted. After the bombers are safe, the real work begins. The P-51s drop low, hugging the deck, transforming from high-altitude guardians into lethal ground attack aircraft. Airfields, rail yards, oil cars, anything that moves and supports the German war machine is a target. Every strafing run, every destroyed hangar, every downed veteran pilot hollows out the Luftwaffe faster than it can recover. It's a war of attrition, fought not just in the skies but on the ground. The choke points of this war are no longer just factories. They are fuel dumps and ball-bearing plants. The strategy is simple and devastatingly effective. Missions are now defined by these critical targets. Think of the escorts over the heavily defended synthetic oil refineries at Merseburg Luna and Paulitz. These weren't just about protecting bombers. They were about strangling the enemy's lifeblood. P-51s on aggressive sweeps would catch the heavily armored Sterngruppen FW-190s before they could even form their deadly ramming wedges, neutralizing the most desperate German tactic. Down south, the 5th 10th Air Force's Mustangs shepherded B-24s all the way to the infamous oil fields of Ploesti, a round trip from Italy that was previously a death sentence. But behind the grand strategy are the individual human stories. Imagine a young American pilot, hundreds of miles from home, his heart pounding in his chest. He leans the fuel mixture, watching the needle, praying he has enough to make it back. He's pushing his machine and himself to the absolute limit. Contrast that with a German ground crewman on a muddy airfield, watching a fresh-faced pilot, barely out of training, taxi a patched-up fighter out on what little fuel they have left. He knows the boy has too few hours, too little chance. And for the first time in the belly of a B-17, the bomber crew feels a sense of security. They look out their windows and see the familiar shape of the Mustangs. Their little friends, staying with them all the way to the target and all the way back. That feeling of protection was a game-changer. This relentless campaign of attrition had a direct, if unseen, impact on the beaches of Normandy. When D-Day arrived in June 1944, the Allied fighters owned the skies over the invasion fleet and the landing zones. Where was the Luftwaffe? They had been bled white over the preceding months. The sporadic attacks they managed to mount over Normandy were a ghost of their former strength, a testament to the months of staggering losses and crippling fuel starvation. The path to the beaches was cleared in the skies over Germany. But this isn't the end. The pressure is only tightening. The screws are turning toward a new decisive phase. As summer turns to autumn, the focus will narrow even further. The Allies know the Luftwaffe's ultimate vulnerability. With the Mustang's unparalleled range, they can now systematically target the one resource the German war machine absolutely cannot fly without: oil. The Great Autumn Oil Campaign is about to begin. The sky over Germany, fall 1944. This is the turning point. This is where the air war is won. Imagine the scene. A vast armada of B-17s and B-24s, hundreds strong, pushing deep into the Reich. Their targets? The synthetic oil plants at Luna and Blechhammer, the very lifeblood of the German war machine. And pacing them, glinting in the high-altitude sun, are the long-nosed silhouettes of P-51 Mustangs. This wasn't just another escort mission. This was a revolution in air combat. As the first specks of Luftwaffe interceptors rose to meet the challenge, they weren't met over the bombers. No. They were ambushed 50, even 100 miles out. Roving packs of Mustangs, hunting on their own terms, tore into the German formations before they could even form up. The Germans called them Jabos, fighter bombers, but these were hunters, pure and simple. Any that managed to slip through this first deadly screen then faced a second wall of steel. More Mustangs, flying close escort, a shepherd's crook of fighters guarding the flock. The effect was catastrophic for the Luftwaffe. Pilots who survived the aerial gauntlet returned to find their airfields cratered and burning, strafed by the same Mustangs that had just decimated their comrades. They landed with fuel tanks running on fumes, only to find there was no more fuel to be had. The refineries were burning. The rail lines were shredded. Flight hours for the German Air Force plummeted. Veteran pilots were gone, and new recruits, barely trained, were being thrown into a sky owned by Allied veterans flying the best piston engine fighter of the war. Their engines seized for lack of oil. Their tanks were empty, and their sky was full of Mustangs. This victory didn't belong to the P-51 alone. We must honor the cost and the team that made it possible. We remember the rugged P-47 Thunderbolts and the twin-boom P-38, lightnings that carried the burden for so long, battling their way to the edge of their range and back. We honor the bomber crews who paid in blood for every mile, teaching the fighter pilots the brutal lessons of air combat over the Reich. And we salute the ground crews, the unsung heroes who worked through freezing winters, wrestling with temperamental Merlin engines to keep these warbirds flying. They were the foundation upon which this victory was built. So how did the P-51 change the fate of the air war? It's because the Mustang represented a unique, perfect union of range, speed, and high-altitude performance. This wasn't just a better fighter, it enabled a completely new doctrine. It allowed for offensive counter-air sweeps deep inside enemy territory, wrapped around the core mission of strategic bombing. It meant the Allies were no longer just defending their bombers. They were proactively dismantling the Luftwaffe in the air, on the ground, and at its very roots the fuel that powered its engines. The result was a sky transformed. When the landing craft hit the beaches on D-Day, the dreaded Luftwaffe was a shadow of its former self, unable to effectively challenge the invasion. The path to Berlin was opened. By early 1945, the war had come full circle. American escort fighters, once barely able to cross the Channel, were now circling at will over the shattered heart of the Third Reich, a final, undeniable symbol of total air supremacy. The long-legged fighter from North American had not just won dogfights. It had broken the back of an air force and helped reshape the course of history. If you were moved by this story of ingenuity, courage, and the machines that made history, please subscribe to our channel. We have many more untold stories from World War II to share with you. Thank you for watching.